Welcome to You're in Detention, and this special episode is a staff room unmasked. So I'm absolutely thrilled this week that in detention we have our very own Joe Hill.
Thanks, Kerry, for putting me in detention somewhere I've never
You are very welcome, Joe. Now, I do not believe this is the first time you've been in detention, so do you want to share?
been. Okay, I mean, I was in detention mostly for not doing my homework. That was a constant. I never did my homework ever. So like, I was in detention mostly for that. There was probably some more highlighted, more kind of more. There's probably some better stories to tell, but I'm not really sure are we ready for those yet. We're going to warm up to those. So yeah, homework was my biggest reason for being in detention.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being in detention again today, Joe.
Yeah, it's all right. Maybe a few distracted personality traits would have put me in detention a few other times, but we won't go into those today.
We'll see how we get with the conversation.
Exactly. They might come out anyway.
100%. So we'll jump right in. So obviously set up messy minds, which is absolutely brilliant. But can you talk me through just how you knew you were different?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question, isn't it? Because there's so many different reactions you get when you talk about ADHD, or even when you're thinking of going for diagnosis. But I guess even it doesn't. I didn't really know I was different. I knew that I would struggle more than other people in certain situations, and I knew that I was brilliant in other situations where other people weren't so. But I didn't know why. And I think my ADHD diagnosis has answered probably a lot of those questions retrospectively. And if I'd known that at a young age, I would have been able to navigate my life differently. But as it happens, that's not the case. So um, I think when I left school and I was like into some real kind of real straightforward, like almost more repetitive roles, I used to really, really struggle with those. And I've talked about that on the first podcast. But I guess when did I know I was different? Well, at the age of 47, quite frankly, when I was diagnosed with ADHD. And the only reason it was even brought to my attention was the the people that are raising awareness at the moment. So there's lots of people that are talking about this, really successful people that are talking about this. The person that I'd listened to the most to get my kind of understanding of it after I'd done some of my own research was Alex Partridge, because he talks a lot about undiagnosed ADHD in women, particularly at my kind of age, where maybe your kind of strategies that you had in place don't really work for you when like menopause whacks you straight over just when you think you kind of got it sorted. So there was a lot of education and a lot more knowledge that I was picking up only through these short bursts of like reels on Instagram and things, because I don't really want to absorb, and I'm not very good at reading books because I can't take the information in so well. But yeah, I was probably, yeah, really, really almost middle aged. Well, way past middle aged, actually, knocking on 50 before I even knew. And that explains obviously quite a lot of the things that had happened prior to that throughout my life. And of course, I didn't really know why that was.
So talking about the diagnosis, so what led you to think, okay, I'm gonna get a diagnosis, and what went with that?
But it's really weird trying to work out whether I even wanted a diagnosis, because after doing so much research, I already knew. So I knew what the symptoms, or you know, like symptoms, the kind of conditions and how it presented, and I knew exactly how I was. So I thought, well, do I need to get a diagnosis? It's very difficult to get a diagnosis as well, or even, sorry, to get seen to be assessed, particularly now with the wait list. It's gone up to 8 years, which is I mean, it's crazy. They wouldn't be that for any other condition. It would be intolerable. But there's, there's so many people suddenly like me realizing that, they've had a lifetime of being different, but not really understanding why, and understanding why they've been, either brilliant or struggling. And then you kind of get to this point, and not only do you have the question about whether you want a diagnosis, you have a lot of people around you asking why you want a diagnosis, people talking about getting a label and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not sure of any other condition people would think it was all right to talk about it like that, because there's nothing wrong with wanting to know why you struggle with things, and also why that's the case, and how you can help yourself move forward. So for me, yeah, it was all about making that decision, and I did make that decision, and I had a private diagnosis myself because I wasn't prepared to wait 3 years at the age of 47. Um, I wanted to be able to deal with that and then work out how best I then moved forward with my life, and I could make informed decisions, that were best for me and also kindest for me as well. So I went through the private diagnosis, and yeah, it was fairly laborious, quite frankly. There was a lot of form filling in. There was a lot of talking about it to other people, because you have to get other people to fill in forms, people that have known you since like you were younger. And it kind of said on my form, someone that's known you that, that you were younger and that's kind of known you throughout throughout that period. Well, if you're 47 years old, I left home at probably 16, 17. So, it's been a long time since I've lived with my parents. So they can kind of talk about me when I was younger, but really to talk about me now day to day, that would be very difficult for them. So I actually had got the one of my team members who worked really closely with me at the time to actually fill in this questionnaire, which he obviously did. So it was, yeah, it was quite a difficult process just going through, because if you do have ADHD, then you usually are absolutely terrible at admin. So yeah, I didn't really enjoy the process. I didn't really know what to make of it, and even in the appointment, um, the lady said, "Do you want us to let your GP know?" And immediately I said no. I didn't really know quite what to make of it or what to do with it, and actually I didn't talk about it for a while afterwards either. It took me a bit of time to kind of process that myself before I was ready to talk to other people about it.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. So you've been diagnosed. Was there anything that you then took forward, medication or different ways to cope with, I suppose, the what you have with ADHD?
Yeah, it was really weird because I initially, when I was at the appointment, the psychiatrist asked me about medication, and I said that I wasn't ready to even think about that yet because I didn't know. I needed some time to process it. I wasn't just going to go straight. Yeah, give me some medication because I want to be different, and I want to be able to focus, and I want to be able to do all these things that medication would probably allow me to do. I was really concerned that it might take away all of the bits of me that have got me to this point, which have got me, through a really successful career. They've been very challenging when I was younger. Actually, ADHD has caused me to make some poor decisions when I was younger, because obviously I wasn't aware of that. And the impulsive side of it is actually really dangerous. It's really destructive. And when you start mixing that with alcohol and the things, you really can make some poor choices. But going back to medication, I didn't feel that getting to the age of 47 and suddenly going on medication was the answer for me. I'm still unmedicated at the moment, even though they did give me some medication if I wanted to take it. And I do sometimes when I'm working with you and we're trying to focus on a day's work of a list of things that we need to do, I sometimes think, oh, for your sake, maybe I should do that to try and get through. But I think, just trying to gamify things and body doubling and all the kind of other coping strategies that you might have are always there, and they always do work. But sometimes it's just, we're just always making far more effort than a neurotypical brain just to be able to do the things that other people find very easy. But the list of strengths that I have that's got me to, to a very successful career are things that I don't want to lose, and I don't want to mask those. So I'm way more prepared to talk about it now. I'm way more prepared to talk about it around the house, openly with my family, with people that I work with yourself, Kerry, as you know. But even before I left my corporate career, I started to get the confidence to talk about it. And I was less worried about the stigma attached to it, because I know that I was successful in my career because of my ADHD strengths, not despite them. And when you work out that that's all of those strengths come from ADHD and it's part of me, that's just how my brain's wired. And it's wired in a brilliant way. It's just wired in a different way to a neurotypical brain. So it works differently. But that's a real positive in a workplace to have that. So as soon as you kind of are almost at peace with yourself and you celebrate how your brain works and let it work in the way that it wants to, then the gloves are off, the boundaries are down, and you can achieve so much. But throwing medication in there's always been a bit of a risk for me.
And I absolutely understand that. I think getting to 47 and then being able to reflect and actually, what was it, through the strengths that you bought. Um, so talk to me about some of the strengths that you've got that you've used throughout, which you would attribute to ADHD.
It's really odd, because I think before I come to the strengths, I bet you when I left my corporate role, and decided I was going to go into business with set up messy minds, almost guarantee there will be people in my old corporate company that will have said, she was really successful. Why is she going to go and told everyone she's got ADHD? What was she doing that for? She was doing really well. Well, I was doing really well, and I am doing very well. And it's, for me, that decision to leave corporate and use the strengths that were probably, well, whilst they were fantastic in the workplace in terms of leadership, like critical thinking, problem solving, and all of that. I mean, if there was a difficult team, if there was a team to manage in a very difficult area of the business, guarantee I would have been in there managing and leading that team, because I have no worries about how difficult the environment is. In fact, that's when my brain will be the most effective in a crisis situation. So, trying to get teams out of like a really difficult technology problem or backlogs of work and things like that. That's always been a massive strength of mine, and just leading those teams with empathy and an inclusive environment. Being able to take risks, calculated risks that I'm absolutely comfortable with, and knowing that I can sleep at night because there's rationale behind those risks, but I'm not afraid to take them. And I think just that, I don't know, it's that intuition that you have. So when it comes to recruitment and people, it's very, very, it's such a strength to have in the workplace. But I think, one thing that I remember my dad saying when I got married, in we had a few people doing my father of the bride speech, but my dad finished it off, and he was saying that one thing that I've always been is really like positive and optimistic. And again, there can be a terrible situation, but I'll see the way through it, and I'll see the good in it. So there's so many strengths there that you can bring to any situation. But I think unless I was working in a leadership role, I always felt like I was kind of stifled a bit. And I would always be naturally kind of, if I was in a team, I was then leading it. That's just how it's worked through my career. I've moved into areas, inherited teams. But before that, if I was in that team doing the work, I was very quickly then leading it, which is how my career's got to where it did. Um, but yeah, it's there's so many strengths, isn't there? And I think very often ADHDers have to view the world through this negative perception of ADHD. And it's such a shame because we know that there's so many successful people that have the condition, some of which are brilliant and they're talking about it, but others, like I know people in the corporate I used to work in with ADHD, they will not talk about it for fear that it's going to affect their career in some way, shape, or form. But there's so many people struggling with ADHD at the moment, and because there's almost like two halves almost. So there's the people that are really struggling with it, and then the people that are really successful with it. But those people need to talk about it openly in order for the other people to realize that actually it's not all doom and gloom and it's not negative. But if you've got ADHD, you've probably had 20,000 more criticisms than a neurotypical growing up. So no wonder you get to adulthood and you think you're not good enough, or you think that you're somehow, going to detrimentally affect a team. But you're not. You just need to understand where's the right environment for you, and you need to be in a psychologically safe enough environment to talk about it. But there's a real divide at the moment between people that are thriving with it and people that are struggling with it. And the people that are thriving with it can help. So it's really important that people like me that are successful in careers, in big corporates, in executive leadership, talk about it.
Fab. I will have a view on this, but what was your feeling? Because you didn't just share that you had ADHD at old place, you went quite big with it. So, but talk me through that, and then I suppose what you felt at the time, what happened after, and what you think was the impact.
I guess we'll go with the go big or go home. Uh, well, yeah, I it took me a year to be prepared to talk about my diagnosis, and I didn't really know. I told my initial, but the team that worked with me and for me, I had told fairly soon after I had that, because I wanted to share that with them, because there's probably things that I was doing where they thought, right, Joe, why are you switching conversations 20 times? And you know, they were they've always been fantastic with me. They know to send me bullet points. They knew how to kind of interact with me because I'd worked with them for so long. Had a very, very high, I would say 100% retention rate of people that were in my team, and other than ones that went on to of course do bigger jobs, which is amazing. Um, but yeah, I decided that someone needed to talk about this, and I felt, well, there was people talking about it and there was a network, but I didn't feel like it was really someone there in their soul, to people, to others, to try and help them, anyone that was struggling with this, feel like seen. So I decided to do an interview with one of someone that I really trusted, and we did an interview all about my ADHD. And I kind of almost, like, if you like, came out of the closet with it, with my diagnosis, publicly, on an interview that went out to all of the employees across a FTSE 100 company. And the what I wasn't expecting is the response that that got, because I was then inundated with emails and messages on Teams and phone calls in some cases, um, with people that were going through very similar themselves, or had children going through that, or really resonated with what I was saying and have gone off to get diagnosed themselves, or at least explore that. So I feel like it was really weird because the video was supposed to come out about 6 months before it did. And the reason that I didn't want it to come out when it was supposed to come out is because we were going into a redundancy program. And RSD being RSD, I didn't want people to think that I was putting that out there ahead of going into that. I do. Firstly, I didn't want that to be part of it because that's not what it was. But also it had to land at the right time, and we sent it out in neurodiversity kind of awareness week, and that's when it went out in the end. But yeah, the outreach that from that video, just of me talking openly, had such a big impact on other people. I think I think I had someone put a meeting in my diary once, and I didn't actually know what it was about. And when I went on the meeting, this lady, she just burst into tears, just because I think just this connective connection of feeling like seen and heard, and feeling like actually you're not broken. Yeah, it was it was a go big or go home moment, and
But I think it showed. I think it took, what it did do for a lot of people is remove some of that stigma. So you can't be up here and have ADHD. How's that even possible? And I think what you've done is you've been so open about it. I've got all these amazing strengths. That's how I've got to where I am, undiagnosed until 47. Um, and actually, you've just been told, okay, well, yes, your mind works differently. Your brain is different in its way of thinking, maybe, than others. Actually, that's what makes you so brilliant at what you do.
yeah, I couldn't. I mean, obviously, other people do get to positions where I was at without ADHD. Of course, they do. But for me, my strengths that are part of me were what got me there. And I think once you start playing to those strengths, once what you know what they are, then you can actually I mean, you can do really well. I didn't know it was very, very hard when you have ADHD to write down, to kind of articulate or write down what your strengths are, because everything's all very, like, could be kind of jumbled up in your head. But when you go through the reason I created the Making Sense of Yourself program is that once you understand who you are, what parts of you, how the ADHD plays into that, what you've been masking, and what your strengths are, and where you might get in your own way. I think when you kind of start peeling back layers of the onion, if you like, and you start to think, oh my, okay, this is me. These are the situations that I know I've clearly been masking in. These are the situations now when I feel like I can just be myself. It just makes a huge difference to your self value. And I'd, look, I'd already had a messy minds in my mind, and had been working on that, thinking, "Right, okay, this, I feel like I need something a bit more around adding value, and, more than I was getting from my corporate job." So messy minds has been something I've been working on, thinking about in the background for about 18 months, mostly to do with coaching. I'm a coach. I've coached people in my leadership role. I've mentored people. I've coached people through my kickboxing business. That's what I do. So I thought, maybe there's something more we can do with this than me just having a lifestyle business as a coach. Maybe there's something more, and maybe we need to go and work with businesses. And I think it was funny, that the guy that did the interview with me, actually, on my ADHD, he said to me, "Joe, only you would decide just to set up like a kind of global coaching academy business, rather than just going and setting up as a lifestyle coach." But that's it. I need that environment to be able to thrive, really. And yeah, I'm not interested in a lifestyle business. We can make a huge impact for people, and we can get them to see their own value. So next time when they're trying to be people pleasers, or they've got no boundaries, or they're in burnout because they don't want to say anything, because they think everyone will be like annoyed with them and they're going to get the sack or whatever, they're able to have a conversation which is not personal, it's not emotional, it is, okay, can we talk about this, please? Because this now doesn't work for me, or actually do it this way because I find that easier. That's all it is. People are very, very reluctant to have those conversations.
So I'm guessing then that's why you left your corporate role completely, um, because you did have a very, very successful career there. So I suppose one question might be, why didn't you do coaching as a side hustle? Got plenty of people who do that. What was your thought process between, no, okay, this is what I need to go and do?
Yeah, it's like I am either all in or all out. So I I would quite easily just thought, I'll go and coach a few people, but that's not really going to have an impact on the world. And I feel like everyone's here for a reason, and I didn't know what my reason was, and I didn't know what my purpose was. So once I then have this kind of now burning desire to make a difference to neurodivergent and be a voice in the room, because I can be a very loud voice when I want to be, as you know, Kerry, too loud. Um, we need to be talking about this more, and I think this issue is only going to is going to become bigger and bigger, and it's going to become more prominent, and we need people that can talk positively about this. I've seen so many forums which I'm part of now that wasn't part of before. I feel like I've very privately kind of, apart from the interview, I've very privately dealt with my diagnosis. I haven't joined loads of support groups. I haven't really done that, but I am in those groups now because of a lot of our material we do put in those groups. And I feel like it's, yeah, I just, the people in the groups almost, they're struggling so much. I don't know, even when there's really good advice in there, I think people are really struggle to take it. We're really good at giving advice if we've got ADHD. We're terrible at taking it because it means adjusting your life, and it means very often forcing yourself into routines that you might find difficult. So, like, my husband was just talking to me about a Bupa assessment, saying that we need to, cut down, cut down on like sweets and things like that. And I'm thinking, that I know my diet is probably not the best, because sometimes I can go through a day fueled by like Haribo, but almost like I know what works for me, and so I kind of roll with that, because what works for me doesn't work for someone else. Do you know, whatever I do now, it's not as unhealthy as drinking a whole bottle of Thunderbirds in one night when I was 17 and then going out and drinking more. There's some real destructive, addictive personality traits that come along with ADHD, and they are what are, are getting people into all sorts of trouble. And my daughter works in a prison, and there's so many prisoners that have ADHD, probably untreated, undiagnosed, impulsive. It can be a very, very destructive thing to have. But that's why it's so important, I think, that you understand it and you can understand where it's playing in and how to manage that. It can be done successfully. You just need to know where your boundaries are and be able to see when it's kind of playing in and showing up.
Super. So you've just touched on obviously a conversation that you've had at home about Bupa. I love the let's think about how many sweets we're eating. I'd love to be involved in that conversation. Um, but obviously you've got the kids, husband. So what's, I suppose, has there been an impact, like pre knowing that you had ADHD to post?
Yeah, I think, yes, definitely. I'm different now. I mean, it was funny. I was looking at when I was diagnosed. It was November 2023. I actually got married in July 2022, so it's too late for him to do anything about it. But it was, yeah. I feel like my husband is the most patient person on the face of the earth, and he's great with it. I think he's been kind of like almost dragged along on this journey with me, because when I first started talking about it, I think he would. I don't necessarily think he paid that much attention to it, because it was like probably unknown to him. I didn't really know what it was. I had taught kids with ADHD before when I taught kickboxing, but they were young boys and they were just running around the room like constantly, and so I didn't have any inclination that ADHD was something that I was actually dealing with myself. Um, but he's very very patient. But I think through my diagnosis, one thing I've had to kind of come to terms with, that no matter how much he cares about me and wants to support me, which both of those things he does really well, and and tolerates me, but no matter how much he wants to do that, he will never really understand what it's like to have the condition. Of course, it won't. He won't. But other people with ADHD become your kind of network, if you like. They're your people that make you feel seen and heard. So I can talk to Johnny about my ADHD, and he knows now certain situations. He knows, he's trained now not to put the big light on. He's definitely like, I guess all these things I did before, but I didn't really know why I was doing them. So now he understands it better. I understand it better. The kids, I mean, yeah, they've kind of, I've got two kids nearly over 18, from 0 to 24 years, and 0 to 8, 17 years, and getting, once they get to 18, as far as we're concerned, we've done a good job. So it's, even parenting and having two jobs and two kids and all of that goes along with it. um, Obviously, Johnny has two kids. We've got four between us. So having a lot of people around the house, it can be overwhelming. There's lots of noise around, and that's a lot in itself. So I think when I've looked back at the job that I had at that time, and the kind of stresses of life, it's almost like, I think ADHD is kind of my resilience has got me through that. It's been really helpful in some ways. But if I look at the amount of time I've been on the edge of burnout, it's been a lot. But yeah, there's no doubt it kind of it keeps you firing through. But yeah, he's been brilliant about it. But you need your network of people that you can just understand it, because they have the same mind. And I think that's when I was going through my diagnosis, it's really funny, because the people that over the years I very naturally gravitated to and find it very, very easy to kind of just be with, almost completely myself. When I've talked to them about ADHD, they've come out and said, "Oh, I know I've got ADHD," and it's just weird, how you kind of gravitate to each other. So I think that's really a big thing as well. But know that your other half or people closest to you want to support you, but don't expect them to understand wholly what you're going through, because they can't do that. Only through education can they understand a little bit more about what helps you. And of course, you've got to understand how their mind works, because they've got their own mind. And then, it's not all about me. It's how do I fit in, and how can we kind of keep harmony throughout the house when I'm like this constantly, either up or down. It doesn't matter which.
So, one thing I think is super interesting, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen the posts on social media, but how does ADHD affect things like running the household, specifically the shopping, Joe?
Yeah, we won't talk about the rice incident. We won't talk about that on here. If you want to know what the rice incident was, you must visit our TikTok. That's all we'll say. But yeah, I think that running the household has got to be the most challenging thing, because I've never struggled at work when I've been really, really busy, or whatever it is. I've never ever struggled with work after I got out of the role that I was doing when I first left school, which was really boring. So running a household is a different kettle of fish altogether. And I think this is where Eddie talked about it in an earlier episode of our podcast. You cannot be all things to all people, and I know exactly where I'm strong and I know where I'm not. So I between me and my husband, we have our very, very separate responsibilities of who does what around the house. So to be fair, I would say that around the house now, I mean, we've just moved house and it took us 3 weeks to sort out a load of stuff we'd got in storage, and we're moving out of a flat. And I was like completely overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that we've got. So we've had a massive clear out. And I feel like, right, okay, I need stuff around me to be like, I don't know, I need stuff around me to be ordered in order for my brain to be functioning. Or it could be a complete tip and my brain will be all right with that because it will just kind of block it out. But if the house is tidy and then there's a few things out of place, that just it drives me mad. So it's really weird. Like I can tolerate piles of stuff everywhere. That's how I've always been. Didn't know what the piles were, but we have these doom piles where we just put something where we don't know where it goes, and then they just grow arms and legs. But luckily, my husband sorts these thing piles out or asks me what to do with them. Doesn't always get received well, by the way, because I might be saying, just leave that there because I know where it is. Um, and there's a system and there's method in my madness. So yeah, it's very challenging, and I think I have to everything that I have to do around the home feels like a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of effort. So the rule I have now is don't sit down until you've done everything, and that's one of my coping mechanisms. But in the morning, trying to get out of bed. Oh, yeah, I mean, that takes some effort. I need to get off my phone. I need to get off Reel. If I get on Reels, I've lost an hour of the day real quickly. Um, I think yesterday when we were working on something and my phone, someone texted me, and then at the same time, someone had sent me a reel. It might have even been Claire in the background here. It might have even been Claire. Sent me something on Instagram, so I clicked on that, watched that, laughing my head off at that. Then I started scrolling down, and I thought, I know that I had to call you back, and I knew that I was working on a lesson plan. So I thought, right, it's just so much effort all the time to be doing those things that you have to be doing. And do you know, I think that's why I really struggled at school, because the school reports would be Joanne makes no effort. I was always called Joanne at school because I was always in trouble, but makes no effort. Um, And when you see that written down and you know how much effort you're making, and it's never enough because you can't school's not the kind of environment where I could really learn. But when you see that written down and you are making probably more effort than anyone in the classroom and still failing, you just give up in the end. So I think that's why it's important in adulthood to have these things that work for you. I've always remember this reel that I saw. It said, don't if you have ADHD, just I think there's two things. Don't sit down till you've done what you need to do, but also this don't put it down, put it away. Don't put it down, put it away. Don't put it down, put it away. Because otherwise you start getting these piles everywhere. But yeah, it's challenging. And some people will be watching this going, she's talking about it's so easy. So easy what she's just said. Opening the post, you know. So if Johnny comes in and puts some letters on the side, I won't open them. I've never received good news through the post. It's either a speeding ticket or a bill. Oh, and it's always admin. It's always something I've got to deal with. So, I mean, post. It couldn't be any easier, could it? Open the post and deal with it. No, I don't want to do nothing about that is interesting. So I have to be interested in it. Otherwise, I don't want to do it. Or have to force myself to do it, should I say.
Well, I think that's absolutely fine. I mean, we've talked about it before, haven't we, with the posting a letter, so the other way round. So it's now going out. But again, I think it is one of those things, isn't it? It's a task. It's not particularly exciting until we start putting bets on it, which we do.
Yes, we have to do that. I think that's it. Because you say, right, you've got to post a letter. I'm thinking I've got to post a letter, but that means getting an envelope. Well, I guarantee I haven't got any of those, or if I do, I don't know where they are. They'll be in one of my piles. I've got to find a stamp. I've then got to find the address to write to. Usually got to include something. It usually involves scanning something in. I've got all of those things to do before I even get out of the house, get dressed and go to a post office or a post box. If I have to go to a post office, it's even worse. So it's one thing after another really with that. And but that you posting a letter, all of a sudden, that in my brain's gone. Look at all those things you don't want to do.
So, can you talk to me about your coping mechanisms for like short-term memory?
Yeah, my short term memory is responsible for a lot of things. Um, but the best thing about having a diagnosis is knowing now that I have a short term working memory, and I didn't know that. So I've gone for 47 years without knowing that. And so there was a couple of things actually that drove me to start looking into my diagnosis. One was as a result of having short term working memory, and that is if I was in a meeting and there was like, so you've got a group of people in a meeting, like we all know, meetings, lots of meetings, isn't there? But someone would say something in a meeting, and I would be have a thought, and I would think, is it really vital and important point that I would need to make? And I would, if I did say that point at that moment, it was like a Japanese bullet train. It's like left your mind straight away. So I have a window, a very short window before that thought then gets consumed by another thought because the brain is always producing thoughts all the time. Um, so I would then interrupt whoever's talking. I'd be like, or I wouldn't interrupt. I'd be waiting for the next moment that they took a pause, and I'd be straight in with my point. And but that wasn't because I was being. It would look really rude, or it would look like I wasn't listening to what the person was saying. And actually, I probably wasn't listening because I was so busy trying not to forget this point. It wasn't because I wasn't interested in what they're saying, but to have to get this point across. So what I after my after like that feedback, and probably I think it was probably before my diagnosis, I'd kind of recognized what why I was doing that. So what I would had do then is if I had a point, I would then write it down. So I've always got a paper notebook with me. And when corporates are trying to get rid of paper and ask people to work on OneNote, don't ask me to do that because when I put something on OneNote, I'll never remember it. It's gone. As far as I'm concerned, it's gone. With a notepad, I'll pick it up and I'm like, right, what did I do on here yesterday? Is there any more actions that I need to do? And there, but I would write stuff down on my pad if I had something to say. If it was a virtual meeting, I'd then put my little yellow hand up in the corner, and then I would basically make my point when it got to my turn, or in a meeting, at least I had it back. And if the subject moved on, I would say, could we please just go back to this because I've got a point to make. And it allowed me, I think before that, I kind of had a bit of a glass ceiling on me in terms of how I was coming across. And you know, you can't come across like that at an executive level. You need to be more, um, have less emotions. And emotions have always proved a real problem for me when I was like younger and I was working my way through the kind of hierarchical ranks, if you like. But short term memory, yeah, absolutely. That has been a bit difficult and has caused me to do things like interrupting in meetings. It also means that I can lock the back door and then I go into the kitchen and then I go and check that I've locked the back door again, or I'll go out the front door and then I realise I've forgot my car keys, so I have to go back in the front door again. And um, it's so yeah, there's different ways it shows up in different elements of your life. I think earlier I was taking the dog out and I walked out locked up and realised I hadn't got the dog's lead, so back in I go. But that's just like a constant. But I've always done that. I just didn't know why I did that. But again, it's all about how these things play in and how you kind of make sense. Making sense of yourself, isn't it? I mean, that's what we're here to do now with Messy Minds, and we're so proud of like what we've created so far and how many people that is going to go on to help. But people, the only people that can help themselves is themselves. No one's going to do it for you, but there are people around that can offer that support, whether that's via coaching or with businesses in consultancy. And we have got all the kind of corporate knowledge, but also we've got individual knowledge of how we've managed to make ADHD successful, and how it works for you in life. Some of it's challenging, some of it, all of it probably requires effort, but you can be successful.
Fabulous. Thank you, Joe. I could carry on asking you stuff for hours, hours and hours. So I am confident we're going to do another You're in Detention staff room unmasked soon, just so I can get some more sharing out of you, because that has been absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much, Joe, for going into detention, for a super positive reason. It's been fabulous. And everybody who's watching or listening, because we are on YouTube and Spotify now, please make sure you are giving us a thumbs up and subscribing. Thank you.